Paul Klee, himself an abstract impressionist, wrote that the more horrible this world is, the more abstract art will be, while a happier world brings forth a more realistic art. Klee recognised that abstraction represents a retreat from reality, as if from an assault too painful to witness or bear. In a world deprived of faith, the redemptive value of the cross could only appear as an absurdity. Ask any child who is drawing something what he is trying to do, and he will tell you that he is trying to recreate something that he saw in nature, be it an apple, or the sun, or a tree, or a house. And invariably the measure of the success of the drawing for that child is how closely the drawing resembles nature. Accuracy according to nature was always the standard of reference for artists and societies, for all high civilizations, from the Egyptians and Greeks to the Romans and Europeans. Each culture's succeeding generations of artists try to improve upon, or at least remember, the techniques, lessons and discoveries of the previous generations, always seeking a greater beauty of lines, more solid figures, and truer perspectives. It was generally accepted that there was infinitely more to a face than just a face, something else between the proportions of nose, eyes, cheekbones, jawbones, lips and mouth, and this, of course, would be beauty. If therefore we are to understand anything about the cult of ugliness, we must first understand what beauty is. Its definition is basic enough. According to the great saint philosopher of the Middle Ages, Thomas Aquinas, beauty is that which when seen pleases, no more, no less. If colours and forms and shapes and compositions would please beggars and kings all at the same time, then that would be considered beautiful. But why does it please? What would make the heart delight in that which the eye saw? Well, St. Thomas said that if something gives us pleasure, then there is always somehow present in the thing which gives pleasure something that is good, and the good always attracts us, always pleases us. Now the good which a person sees and senses in some beautiful thing is its form, that is, its wholeness, its proportions. If such a thing is complete, right and balanced, it is good. And what happens is that we are attracted to that form because we sense that there is in the object the same kind of form within us. We see and sense in the form of the beautiful object a good, and the good in it echoes the good in us, or at least the good that should be in us. We are fascinated and attracted by that sameness. It delights us, and we want to remain in its presence. Did you ever watch babies and see how they are totally taken in by other babies, how they react to those other little creatures that are so like them, how they stare at other babies, recognize the similarities, and even reach out to touch their faces? The form of a beautiful object is considered beautiful because it is whole and proportionate, as we would sense ourselves to be whole and proportionate. We delight in the beauty of our own being. There is a resemblance between that which is in us and that which is in the beautiful object, and we are pleased. But that is not all there is to the story. There is one more element present without which we cannot achieve all this pleasant recognition. Just as the eyes of the body need actual light to see anything, so too the eyes of the soul need a similar light, which St. Thomas calls claritas, clarity, a spark of light, so to speak, that glances off the beautiful object and actually comes from the beautiful object. It is the very same spark of being which comes from the being of God. The very being of God is present in the being of the object, and God's beautiful being is therefore revealed in the form and proportions and clarity of the object, precisely because a beautiful thing is a reflection of the beauty of God. We are naturally drawn and attracted to it, as we would be drawn and attracted to God in our desire for union with Him. The beauty of God is somehow mysteriously reflected in the beauty of being, first in nature, then in trees, sunsets, in faces and forms and figures, and then it is reflected in art, in drawings and paintings, and sculptures, and even in architecture, and somehow even more mysteriously in music. The closer those artistic forms conform to nature, the closer they conform to the supernatural, and the more accurately do they reflect the truth, the beauty and the goodness of God. We have been made to believe for generations now that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that it is all a matter of taste and culture, opinion and upbringing, and there is no true objective beauty out there that can be used as a universal standard. It all comes from one's mind and what one likes. So if you think a horribly skewed, out of shape series of smears and stains is beautiful, then for you it is beautiful. Well, I stand here today to say, along with 30,000 years of human instinct and 2,000 years of Catholic tradition, that beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. Beauty resides in the beautiful thing itself. It will either have proportion, wholeness, integrity and clarity in itself and be from God, or it will not have those qualities and will be displeasing to the discerning soul and will therefore be ugly. You see, just as theological modernism denies the objective reality of the supernatural, saying that all dogma, all revelation is just your experience and therefore the truth is what you think is the truth, so too artistic modernism tries to convince us that whatever anyone thinks is beautiful for that person. Indeed, today no one is allowed to say that anything is ugly, for to call something ugly hints at the possibility of an actual real standard of reference by which some things can be beautiful and some things not beautiful. This hints at the possibility of a claim to objective truth, which is certainly not allowed in today's society, because that would hint at a God. We are cowed into a moral and cultural silence before the modern proclamation that a squat, misshapen, misproportioned figure is somehow beautiful, and even perhaps more artistic than the figure that God first created. How could it be said that that which seems so ugly to us was still somehow beautiful to them? Well, they see it still. But now we know that this attitude is simply a modern intellectual conceit, by which their higher appreciation of art makes them superior to those not in on the game. For the same reason, no one today is allowed to say that anything is wrong. To say that something is evil, or to say that something is immoral, if there is nothing that is in and of itself true, then neither is there something that is in and of itself good or bad, neither beautiful nor ugly. Indeed, when you walk into some modern monstrosity of a church, and your instinctive reaction is, "My God, this is ugly," you are right. It probably is ugly. And you have no less an authority than Thomas Aquinas to back you up. You incur no moral or aesthetic fault if weird angles and blank concrete walls in a church make you feel uneasy and uncomfortable. There is no sin in seeing some hideous deformation of Christ on the cross, or some monstrous representation of Mary, and saying that it is hideous, that it is monstrous. Nor is there virtue in trying to think that somehow it is all really beautiful and that there must be something wrong with you. You need no longer feel forced into a corner bleating, "Well, I guess I don't know much about art." It may simply mean that your good human and Catholic instincts are still intact, and that they have somehow survived this ugly, ugly society. In his book, The Spirit of the Liturgy, then Cardinal Ratzinger, now Pope Benedict XVI, wrote, "Contemporary culture turned away from the faith and trod another path, so that faith took flight in historicism, the copying of the past, or else attempted compromise or lost itself in resignation and cultural abstinence. The last of these led to a new iconoclasm, which has frequently been regarded as virtually mandated by the Second Vatican Council, the destruction of images, the first signs of which reach back to the 1920s, eliminated a lot of kitsch and unworthy art, but ultimately it left behind a void, the wretchedness of which we are now experiencing in a truly acute way. Where do we go from here? Today we are experiencing not just a crisis of sacred art, writes Pope Benedict, but a crisis of art in general of unprecedented proportions. But where are those catacombs? Where are those refuges from the human and spiritual horrors of our brave new world? They are in your very homes, your front rooms and bedrooms, your home schools and private academies. That is where the true culture of the new millennium will take shape. For undistracted by the pomps and pleasures, the flashy arrogance and fleshy superficialities of the ugly world around us, mothers and fathers can form and mould and guide their children with unadulterated faith and inculcate into their souls every form and example of beauty. And in isolating and insulating your children from the moral squalor about them, you are only strengthening them in their eventual confrontation with it. Fill the walls of your homes with beautiful art. Fill the ears of your family with beautiful music. Fill the souls of your children with beautiful stories, and there will be no room left for the insipid, the warped, the ugly, and the faithless. If you can make of your family a little church, you will not have to be engaging constantly in rearguard action to counteract the toxins of the media and schools or that of your children's strange new friends down the block. They will not be forced to unlearn at home the lessons they have learned outside. Your families will come to know and appreciate that there is only one thing about which to be busy and in which to revolve, only one thing to cultivate, and that is their souls, the beautiful gift from God. This realization will then help them to do beautiful things, create beautiful things, and appreciate all the beautiful things that issue forth from beautiful grace-filled souls. And if we do this, then little by little, as modernity continues to die, as surely it must, for is not death its very theme, it will be replaced by life, in fact a new culture of life, whose healthy hallmark will be the celebration of the beauty of God in the beauty of the life around us. And as Cardinal Ratzinger concluded in that same chapter in his book The Spirit of the Liturgy, he said, "But what does all this mean practically? Art cannot be produced as one contracts out and produces technical equipment. It is always a gift. Inspiration is not something one can choose for oneself. It has to be received, otherwise it is not there. One cannot bring about a renewal of art in faith by money or through commissions. Before all things it requires the gift of a new kind of seeing, and so it would be worth our while to regain a faith that sees. Wherever that exists, art finds its proper expressions."